All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for choosing to spend your evening with us. My name is Jenny Wolfenbarger, and we have a crazy 60 minutes to share with you tonight. We're so excited. Tonight's webinar kicks off Caries Disease Awareness Month. We have a lot of content to get through. We have 9 fabulous speakers. And so we are going to move really quickly through this housekeeping items. Let's see. I want to remind you all that chat is for chat and Q&A is for questions. So if you've got questions, please put them in that Q&A box. All the presenters' bios were in your confirmation email, so you've got access to that. And disclosures, commercial support for this CE program is being provided by Oral Biotech, and no honoraria are being paid to any of tonight's speakers. CE certificates and a link to the recording will be emailed in 3 to 5 business days. We are going to, when it's 60 minutes on the hour, we will be putting into the chat box the verification code as well as announcing it. And then, because I know we're probably going to run over tonight because we have so much content to get through, we will be doing a short Q&A. So hang on after the full hour. If we're not finished, hang on and we'll get to that Q&A portion and finish out our presentation. So without anything more, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to our first presenter tonight, which is Katrina Sanders Stewart.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And thank you so much, Jenny, for that incredibly warm and kind introduction. My name is Katrina Sanders Stewart, and tonight I'm going to be sharing programmatic content alongside my amazing colleague, the incredible Catherine Gilliam. And I do just have to start by sharing this photo of the two of us. Look at these little cutie patooties. Catherine and I are both proud members of the Cavity Free Club when we were children. And who doesn't love being a member of the disease-free club, right? I remember as a child being told all things about sugar bugs and how concerning those sugar bugs were for my teeth. And so I was very proud every 6 months to go to my dental visit and to have my dental hygienist, Linda, and Dr. Dawn tell me that I was still a member of the cavity-free team. And I share this because first and foremost, I think we all have to appreciate this horrible mullet that my mother cut into my hair, but also we need to appreciate the fact that most of us begin our foundational education about decay as children. And oftentimes we're taught about this foundational education as cavities being an acute disease that is simply and easily treated with a drill and fill modality. And unfortunately, that foundational education that we learned when we were children was also a heavy foundational piece of what we were trained to do as dental professionals. That if a patient has decay, you drill and you fill. As a dental hygienist, I was told if a patient has decay, you restore with fluoride. And the reality is, we do in fact understand that the decay process is actually multimodal. The effects of untreated carious lesions in the oral cavity extend well beyond those physical ailments and subsequently into the pathophysiological ailments. Now, more than ever, we have the opportunity to create an important rebranding of how our patients and we as dental professionals have seen decay, the No Cavity Club, into recognizing that this is something bigger than simply a black hole in a tooth. What we're talking about this evening, the reason for the season, is appreciating what caries disease actually is. And so tonight, we're going to begin by looking at the importance of rebranding what cavities are to help our patients understand that this is actually a dental caries disease process, which truly colors the picture of the fact that what our patients are experiencing are actually chronic in nature versus simply looking at this as a tooth decay model. Now, before we dive into all things communication, it is important to know that when we change communication strategies, when we change vernacular of how we describe something, that it is important to know that there are so many different touch points throughout our patient experience, both in and out of the operatory, where we need to change those communication strategies. So tonight, as we look at the importance of the Caries disease process, and you implement this into your clinical care, that you identify all of the different spaces throughout the patient journey in which that verbiage and that vernacular is going to need to adjust. Now, we're going to talk about the Caries disease process. And it's important to know that each one of our patients, when they present for their new patient exam, for their hygiene recare exam, particularly doctors, when they're presenting to your operatory for restorative work, that they step somewhere inside of this entire spectrum of the Caries disease process. We begin with patients who are at risk, whether that be influenced by their own lifestyle complications or whether that be influenced by things like medications or genetics. And from there, we see patients move on a journey to demineralization, subsequently moving into enamel, dentinal, and subsequent advanced caries. And I think it's important when we describe the Caries disease process to our patients that we acknowledge the role that we play on the patient-centric educational modality. And by that, I mean, instead of describing to our patients that they have a little cavity that can probably just remineralize itself, perhaps we explain to the patient that they're presenting with demineralization, the earliest in the stages of the Caries disease process, and that our opportunity now is to employ preventive modalities. However, as our patients move throughout this spectrum to the advancement of the decay into the patient's tooth, enamel, and subsequent dentin, it's also important for our patients to understand that this decay, although tooth-centric, becomes a massive chronic complication that requires lifelong management. Very similarly to how we educate our patients when it comes to gingival and subsequent periodontal diseases. And so tonight, what I'm doing alongside my esteemed colleague, the incredible Catherine Gilliam, is to unpack the ways in which we can help to communicate the presence, the exacerbation, the systemic ramifications of this disease process, moving our patients beyond the, did I get no cavities today, doctor? To understanding the fact that the No Cavity Club was the earliest in our understanding of how we really need to educate our patients on the whole host of ramifications that this chronic disease requires of us. With that, I'm going to hand over the microphone to my amazing colleague, the incredible Catherine Gilliam. Catherine?
Thank you, Katrina. I appreciate it. And what we wanted to share with you tonight is that we believe the most effective way to communicate with our patients about dental caries disease is to use communication skills that demonstrate our care for them as individuals. While dental disease is so commonplace for us, it can be traumatizing for our patients. If our patient has an expectation that they're healthy and we tell them that they're not, it can catch them off guard and cause them great anxiety, as well as worry about pain and finances. We offer tonight a few techniques that we've used to help our patients understand their condition and understand that we truly care about them and that we'll support them throughout their treatment. In our opinion, the most essential skill is empathy. Empathy is a natural character trait for many healthcare practitioners. And if it's not a natural trait for you, it's worth cultivating. To demonstrate empathy, acknowledge the emotion that a loss of a measure of health can elicit. Remember, your patient might believe he, she, or they are healthy, and this news of dental caries disease can be distressing. We can't take these emotions lightly, or a patient will get the sense that we don't care about them, and that will drive a wedge between us. Another essential element of empathy is to absolutely eliminate blame and judgment. As you know, and as you'll learn more about tonight, dental caries disease is about much more than whether or not someone brushes and flosses regularly or properly. And research shows people accept treatment and heal better when they believe their caregiver truly cares about them. Empathy can sound like, I know it's upsetting to be told you have dental caries disease. We're going to take care of you like you're one of the family and make sure you're comfortable every step of the way. Now, another communication skill we recommend is to use simple, clear language to clarify that dental caries is more than just a cavity. Our patients need to understand that dental caries disease can affect the entire body. You might say, your mouth is the gateway to the rest of your body. If your mouth is infected, those bacteria can enter your bloodstream, and the inflammation they cause can affect all of the organs in your body. That's simple and clear. A couple of other very effective communication techniques are active listening and including the patient in treatment decisions. Using phrases like, I hear what you're saying, and can you tell me more about that? And even, I've felt the same way, can help the patient feel understood. Asking, what do you think would be the best way for you to proceed with treatment is a powerful way to help the patient realize that they own their disease, they're in charge of their health, and you're there to support them on their journey to optimal health. The last communication skill we have time to share today is to give reassurance and hope. Hope is one of the most important gifts we can give our patients. When we give reassurance that they'll be okay and we'll be there to take care of them, their anxiety lessens. They will be better able to cope with the news of their diagnosis and their treatment. This is one way we can love our patients back to health. Our knowledge of dental caries has expanded to realize that this is not simply a tooth disease, and it can have serious ramifications for systemic health. On this slide, we share some facts about the connections between dental caries and systemic diseases and conditions. Most of our patients and some of our colleagues are not yet aware of these connections, and it may be helpful to use phrases like, we now know, when discussing oral and systemic connections with patients. They will begin to understand that as you are learning new information, you are now shifting your focus from dentistry to whole health and wellness. Feel free to take a screenshot of this slide and listen closely as our partners in the cooperative, powered by Oral Biotech, share more with you about the broader implications of dental caries disease. And now we'll hear from our partners, Dr. Doug Young and Brenda Lopez, about the fascinating biology and chemistry of dental caries disease.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for the lovely introduction. Dr. Doug Young and I will be presenting on the bacteria and chemistry of caries disease. It's the saliva and biofilm, stupid. So establishing a solid foundation of understanding the biology and chemistry of caries disease will help empower you to successfully navigate through the caries risk assessment and decide which treatment modality will set your patient up for success in preventing caries disease. Dental caries is a disease initiated by a complex biofilm rather than one pathogen, which changes dynamically with its environment and the local chemistry of the tooth site, surrounding pellicle, and saliva. Acid-producing bacteria such as mutant streptococci, strep mutans, and strepsobrinus, lactobacillus, and other non-MS low pH bacteria can ferment carbohydrates, with sugar being the worst, and then create small chain organic acids around the pH of 3.8 to 4.8, which will 3.8 to 4.8, which will then soak down through the protective pellicle and dissolve the subsurface of the enamel. This initial caries lesion is often called a white spot lesion because it looks chalky white when it's active. The critical pH is the pH at which the mineral will dissolve in acid. Here is the approximate critical pH of fluorapatite, carbonated apatite, dentin, and cementin. Fluorapatite is a phosphate mineral that protects the tooth enamel. Carbonated apatite is a hard mineral that makes up a large portion of the enamel. Notice carbonated apatite is more soluble than fluorapatite because it takes a stronger acid to dissolve the fluorapatite. The beauty of this is, though, remineralizing an active caries lesion actually represents the few times when we can make the tooth better than it was before. It's a great opportunity to apply science in the mouth. Takashaki and Navad show that a low pH environment will cause good bacteria to evolve in order to survive such conditions and actually create acids themselves. We call these non-MS low pH bacteria. So, getting down to the nitty-gritty of things, pH actually determines two things: if a tooth will remineralize or demineralize, and determine healthy versus acidogenic biofilm behavior. Saliva is what sets stage for the chemistry. Healthy saliva looks like water and provides pH neutralization. Thicker, mucus-like, bubbly, foamy, stringy saliva often has a lower pH and a lower flow rate. For a visual, would you want to drink a cup out of normal looking water or a cup of frothy, foamy, stringy water? Once you learn how to recognize healthy saliva and abnormal saliva, you will quickly see the association with caries risk. If the patient has hyposalivation, they will be missing the calcium, phosphate, and pH neutralization. And this last slide is a great visual of saliva's influence on caries disease process. Hint, hint, that submandibular gland location. And now I'll pass it off to my partner, Doug.
Thank you, Brenda. And hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. No matter what level of your knowledge of this disease, I hope you're here to support us on our presentation for Caries Awareness Month. So, Brenda, you know, it took me many years to figure out how simple this is. I told myself, if a patient continues to get active caries lesions, it's all about the saliva and biofilm. Thus, the title, it's about the saliva or biofilm, stupid. It took me a while to get that through my thick head. And so that's why saliva and bacterial assessment is so important. Yet, how many of us here are actually doing that? So let's take a closer look and see if we can get into the chemistry of this disease. The chemistry is quite simple. I often make the analogy of making a chocolate chip cookie, and if you put 5 things in a bowl, you're guaranteed a cookie. So let's look at this. If you put a tooth in acid, the tooth soon becomes unhappy because it dissolves the subsurface and releases calcium and phosphate into the saliva. Now, to neutralize that, the first thing that happens is our saliva neutralizes the acid, which stops the outward flow of ions. And then we simply have to build up calcium and phosphate in the saliva, which is at a greater concentration than inside the diffusion channels. And those ions will actually diffuse back into the subsurface and make that surface better than it was before. Now, this reaction will happen without fluoride, but if you have fluoride, it greatly accelerates the process and creates an acid-resistant fluorapatite surface. So let's review the 5 ingredients of the remineralization recipe. We mentioned calcium and phosphate, which again comes from saliva and it's stored in the pellicle. The pH is also regulated by the saliva. So geez, right here we have 3 things that the saliva are actually play huge roles on, and that's why we need to pay attention to it. The 4th one I mentioned earlier is it's always better to have fluoride topically because it's our #1 weapon against dental caries. Now, the 5th one, you have to use your imagination. If you don't modify the biofilm to stop producing acid, then you're simply going to get another caries lesion somewhere else. So these are my 5 ingredients for remineralization. And if you memorize them and think about them carefully, really, it's a way to do a risk assessment, isn't it? All those questions on a caries risk assessment form can be boiled down to which one of these ingredients are missing. And the treatment plan, your caries risk management plan, should be what products can I recommend for my patient to supplement the health of their mouth? And it could involve many of these ingredients. And as Brenda said before, the pH is incredibly important. It determines whether the tooth will remineralize or demineralize. And it determines whether you're going to have good bacteria or acidogenic biofilm behavior. And again, how many of us are actually paying attention to the pH of the mouth? And how are we going to give products or supplement the saliva to help the patient 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? You just can't tell them to do one thing at night, like brush their teeth with this or that toothpaste. It is a more complex process than that. So how do we assess biofilm load? One of the great techniques I like to use is ATP bioluminescence. This is a game changer at our university. What this did is it helped us modify behavior. And so the chemistry that we just described, of course, is focused on the chemistry, but there's also behavioral and modifiable risk factors that some of my colleagues are going to talk about later. I'm focusing on the chemistry right now. So this bioluminescence meter actually measures ATP activity. And if you recall from biochemistry, every acidogenic organism has to have a proton pump in the cell membrane to pump protons out of the cytoplasm and outside the cell membrane, or else they will die. So this machine, although used in the food industry, was now adapted for dentistry, because now we can gauge the idea of the acidogenic behavior of the biofilm. It just takes a few minutes to do. You take a plaque sample, and this is a pilot study that we did at the University of the Pacific using the AEGD clinic. I trained 6 residents very carefully to learn how to do the swab, not using manufacturer's instructions, but using a vertical swipe so they won't bump the papilla when they take their sample of plaque. So on the left side of the colored bar is the pre-op test. Then we gave them a bottle of the 2.2% hypochlorite antibacterial rinse. And then after the rinse was done, we did a post-op test about 4 weeks later. And as you can see, out of 35 high-risk patients, only 4 did not improve. And when they did improve, they improved dramatically, many of which below the high risk level at 1500. So what this study proved was that the meter works and the rinse works. And so it helps the team and the patient evaluate, hey, what you're doing, what the doctor is doing is actually doing some good. So even though the rinse may not taste the best, I'm going to keep doing it until my bacterial levels are down. So it's a way to judge your treatment as well. So I want to close with the idea of introducing you to the American Dental Association Caries classification system. We won't have time to talk about this chart, so I urge you to look this up, February 2015. The point of showing this is that all but the red column on the right is an advanced lesion, and that is fully cavitated so the bacteria can literally walk into the dentin. That's when it's the only situation when you need to do a minimally invasive restoration. The sound, initial, and moderate columns can all be handled with remineralization. And even the classic state board lesion does not have infected dentin, which means it's not fully cavitated. So I urge you to study this chart and learn that we can do a lot with remineralization. I want to end with this last slide showing you never drill a non-cavitated white spot lesion. So I'd like to introduce you to Susan Maples, who's going to talk to you about modifiable risk factors.
I'm really just talking about sugar. Sugar, oh honey, honey. You are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you. Do you know how long we have all known that sugar is addictive as hell? And it's delicious. And that song, though, it came from the 1960s. Interestingly enough, my dad made us change dentists in the 1960s because my dentist owned a strip mall and he opened up an ice cream store right next to his dental office. And I remember my dad saying, what a breach of integrity. They might as well bust a hole right in between and put a door so people can walk in one store and walk out the other. So we have all known that sugar is a huge, huge modifier for caries, and yet we are eating it like it's going out of style. This disease is 100% preventable. Most people don't know that. They often think that they've inherited bad enamel, that it's a familial disease, and it is not. So we cannot solve this piece, this multifaceted disease, without looking at lifestyle change and without addressing it. The problem is we don't get paid to address it. And therefore, very few people do. How many? A 2010 study out of a very large survey out of North Carolina, Jessica Lee's group, said that only 1.6% of all dentists were having any discussion on nutrition changes or dietary changes. So we all know that we release calcium into the acid environment to buffer the saliva. And unfortunately, this is not a simple acid-base chemistry equation, although it should be. We have sugar feeding strep mutans that's producing acid. We also have acidic products going down. We are drinking and eating a lot of acidic foods and beverages, most everything from the grocery store. And we have acid reflux. 60% of us have acid reflux coming up from the stomach. So we have a lot of reasons why calcium would want to leach out of the teeth to buffer the acid. What's really cool about Carie Free is they put together a cocktail of treatment products that if we were to try to get our patients to do all of these things and we were to try to put it together, it would never work. The fact that they put this together for us is incredible. It's a gift to us and we are completely dependent on it. But I want to say, as awesome as this is, here's the deal. We're no better than the drug companies. The pharmaceutical industry does not create cures. They create customers. So by treating caries with pharmaceutical solutions, we're catching the disease and trying to treat it instead of preventing it or looking at root cause analysis. So I want to go back to behavior modification because I truly believe that we will never mollify or control caries disease without getting the patient involved in changing some of what caused the problem. I believe that we ought to be using open-ended questions, unlike the health histories, but I have created a health history for my patients where I address caries disease risk factors right on the health history to start and to initiate a conversation. And if you notice, the questions that I chose to ask are largely lifestyle related. Snacking more than, this happens to be our pediatric health history, but it's on the adult health history also. This has a lot of questions about consumable drinks and foods and snacking activities. It also has a section in the health history on fluoride, because we know if we miss the window of opportunity to build fluoride into developing enamel, we've changed the caries risk for a child forever. And we want to start to look at what are the caries attitudes and acceptance of the parents, and what's the caries ingestion rate, and how are we doing with topical fluorides as well. But I want to remind you that sugar, which we're now eating 22 to 40 teaspoons of sugar per person per day in the United States, is not only impacting caries, but certainly obesity, not because sugar is necessarily that caloric, but it alters leptin and ghrelin, our hunger hormones, so we flat out eat more. We eat more of everything, and the food industry knows this, and so they've laden all of our food with sugar, even when you can't taste it, in order to influence our eating and spending. So it's impacting everything from everything that obesity does, sleep apnea, acid reflux, uric acid production, everything. While we've looked at our obesity scales change, and our scales in our homes change, and our seats change, and the gurneys in the hospitals change, we've also seen the rise in obesity mimic the sugar consumption over time in the last couple hundred years. We also take a look at half of our sugar coming from soda. And if you look at the amount of fructose we're ingesting just through soda, we also see this mimic diabetes. Diabetes is a metabolic disease. It's influencing insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome. So all of these are going up with the consumption of fructose. Diabetes is unbelievable right now. I just looked at the statistics. I was updating them for this presentation. By the way, this is diabetes on the left, but this is diabetes also. We see it in the mouth. And if we're not good at recognizing that, that's a subject for another lecture. But if you look at diabetes today, 38.4 million diabetic, type 2 diabetes. And in 2012, which is just the year my son graduated high school, it was 16 million. So take a look at what's happened even in the last decade. It's unbelievable. More than half of our adult citizens are insulin resistant, right on their way to diabetes. The World Health Organization recognizes this as a crisis, even more than tooth decay, even though tooth decay, Caries disease, is our #1 disease on the planet. And they made a recommendation for the US to cut our sugar consumption by 75%. A 75% reduction would represent 5% of our daily caloric intake. A total of an average, if you're a 2,000 calorie a day diet eater, that would be about 100 calories or 26 grams for the entire day, keeping in mind that that's about 2/3 of 1 can of cola for the entire day. So we have a lot of work to do to help people become aware of that. Our mission in our practice is to help children by age 18 develop beliefs, skills, and habitual behaviors, habits to support a lifetime of oral and systemic health. This requires significant dialogue. It requires us to be surrogate brave parents for our kids and have significant conversations. How do we put our kids in the driver's seat for preferred future? We do lots of hands-on science experiences so kids can understand. They can convert grams to teaspoons. They can do their own math. They can figure out how much they're eating, and they can understand what is 5% of their caloric intake. We also help them recognize all the different names that are on all the product labels so they can see where the disguised sugar is lying. We need to keep listening and keep talking. We need to have significant dialogues. Facilitating health change behavior is among the most difficult work we do, but the most meaningful. Creating lasting behavior change for people is super gratifying. So facilitation is literally a two-way dialogue through which we support the patient's self-discovery, not ours. We know so much, but we're helping the patient learn more about where their disease is coming from and what they can do to mitigate that. It's an opportunity to practice kindness, curiosity, and no judgment, no blame, just to stay really, really curious. And we do that through open-ended questions. Questions like, tell me about your diet. Tell me about your guilty pleasures. How are you on sweets? Tell me about what you're drinking through the day. These open-ended questions get at what are some of the causes for that without indicting a patient. And we can really be, as Catherine said, very sympathetic and very empathetic with them. Remember, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. No room for judgment, but also no room for not having the conversation. You need to earn the right to reconstruct their teeth. And that means we need to get to the root cause. So stay curious, follow their lead, be open to outcome. And I don't know if you have some structure for talking about nutrition, but we have some. If you're interested in this, it's on the Brave Parrot website, which will be on your show notes. And I really want to encourage you to develop some effort to talk about nutrition. And you're welcome to steal ours. So yeah, I'd like to be really generous. We need to get kids to the point where they're starting at an early age, integrating real food with their breast milk and learning to build a diversity of foods that are whole foods, not commercial foods, so that by the time they're standing and eating with a fork, they're eating salads right out of the bowl. As with so much parenting, we each get a very short window of opportunity to influence a child for a lifetime. This is yours to influence parents and children. It's time to take our refrigerators, freezers, and pantries by storm and own them. We need to help parents understand this is brain training. The neuroplasticity in our brains allow them to develop preferences at a very young age. I also want to say this is Trick or Treat Month. We have $3.6 billion of candy sold in the US just this month. And I think it's time for all of us to help influence parents on how to give out healthier choices and how to help their kids get through this trick or treat season. Again, this will be available for you. Leadership is not about power, it's about responsibility. And by virtue of you being on this teleconference tonight, you are leaders, and I want to urge you to take responsibility. Be the change you want to see in the world, which means set good examples for yourselves, your family, and your team members to ratchet down sugar. I appreciate you. And if you want to reach me, there's my cell number, there's my email, and I am so proud of this group, and I'm happy to hand this over to the very lovely Michelle Hudson. And she's going to take it next to introduce her partner, Katrina Sellers. And without further ado, Michelle, you're on.
Susan, you are incredible. We all want to thank Dr. Kim Cooch, who is the founder of Caries Free and who has made this evening possible. I also want to bring attention to Jenny and Lacey, who are the masterminds behind our Caries Free cooperative. And every single one of us are incredibly passionate about elevating healthcare, bringing awareness to oral diseases and their impact on systemic health. I, again, am so proud to be a part of this program this evening. Where I would first like to begin before we begin walking through the Caries risk assessment is P4 medicine, which very much complements every presentation that has been brought to you this evening. And what I'm going to complement what Susan said, and she talked about curiosity. And one thing I want you to think about is by being curious, practicing motivational interviewing, active listening, we really do instill trust within our patients, which leads to connection, which then leads to collaboration between we and our patients, and then the rest of their healthcare team. So P4 medicine is the prevention at its best. It is predicting our patients' disease risk, then focusing on preventative measures that cater to patients' personalized risk. And with my experience, I believe the most impactful strategy is when we are able to partner with our patients and allowing them to own accountability. Complementing what everyone has said, being empathetic, caring with our patients. This really does allow our patients to achieve more successful outcomes. The shift of our focus is getting away from sick care and focusing on prevention. And as you can tell, I get really excited because I believe in our profession. Every single one of us here does. And you can see here to the left, the Caries risk assessment. And I want you to first look at that Caries risk assessment and go to the bottom, disease indicators. This is what we generally practice in all of healthcare. We wait for our patients to be symptomatic. Disease is active. We're in this chaos of disease activity, and it is a whole lot more difficult to get our patients out of that state than if we were to begin focusing on prevention from the beginning. So how do we do that? And how do we do that practicing P4? Well, first of all, we cannot practice that without utilizing the Caries risk assessment. Saliva, beautifully explained by Brenda and Dr. Young. Thank you very much. What we know is that pH drives Caries disease. We know that saliva, diet, biofilm play a role. However, talking to your patients, most of your patients think what causes caries is sugar and poor home care. Yep, they have a role, but helping our patients really better understand, have clarity, we really are, again, going to see more successful outcomes. And so when it comes to xerostomia, we cannot ignore that. 50% of our patients are coming into our offices taking one medication causing xerostomia, and that automatically puts them at a moderate risk of disease. And we know that as we progress in age, that is only going to increase. Now, let's also take into consideration that if we're looking at xerostomia, dry mouth, we should also be screening our patients for our mouth breathers, sleep disordered breathing, obstructive sleep apnea. It's so incredibly important. And I promise, if you think your patients only think that you're a dental hygienist and we get to be celebrated this month, you start using these tools and talking about oral and systemic health, they will never call you a teeth cleaner again. Now, moving forward with diet, again, I think this has already been really incredibly explained. So the one ad that I'm going to add here is you have to get Dr. Susan Maples' Brave Parent. Anyone who is desiring to grow their family or has a family, or you're a healthcare provider, whether you're in medicine or dentistry, this is a very simple, incredible tool. Another tool that you need and will be sent to you is the Why Me book that Dr. Kim Cooch and Dr. Doug Young wrote. And again, that was written for our patients. However, it's incredibly impactful and helpful for we healthcare providers in better educating our patients. They need clarity, and the simpler we can be, the better it's going to be for them. And so we know that snacking, we know that unhealthy diet, along with xerostomia, our patients are in this constant state of acidic pH, and that can be very dangerous for them. Not only their oral health, but let's also think about their systemic health as well. Biofilm, we know biofilm, mechanical disruption is incredibly important. However, what I encourage you to do is start thinking critically and looking at strategies that actually enhance overall health and wellness, looking at modifiable risk factors, as Susan said, lifestyle, pH alkaline products that are better going to set our patients up for success. Utilizing the Caries risk screen, this is individualized care right here. We know our patients' risk by using this, complementing it by the salivary diagnostics. And I wish we could talk about this all night. And we have to talk about recall. When in the world did we decide that perio is where we decided our patients' recall? And Susan, I know you want to talk right now. We have to look at our patients' overall risk, and Caries disease can no longer be ignored. 3-month recall for our high-risk patient, 4 to 6 months for our moderate risk patient, 6 to 12 months for our low risk, as long as they do not have Caries disease. I am now going to introduce you to my friend Kendra Sellers, and you are in for a treat.
Hello, hello. Wow, you guys, I'm learning so much too. As a hygienist, I just love all of the information that everybody has given to us. My role in tonight's presentation is to really get us to start thinking about a different way of How do we get reimbursed for all of the things that we are currently doing in our practices? I'm sure if you are a hygienist or even a doctor, you're looking at all of the things that we've been reviewing and you're wondering, how are you going to squeeze this into your schedule? I would love to see our profession slow down, be able to be paid more as a medical professional, and be able to increase and elevate our standard of care. And that is possible. One of the things that I feel we have to do is we have to get past this thing called dental insurance. It's a supplement, you guys. That's all it is. It's a supplemental plan. It's a coupon plan. It's a it's a benefit. That's all it is. But that benefit comes with a lot of limitations, restrictions, exclusions, and frequencies per day or per year that doesn't allow us to provide the best care for our patients. And I hope that you consider this as an option. There's so much discussion around dental benefits and how bad they are and how we aren't getting paid as much as we used to. And those fees, those reimbursements haven't went up in years. And there's so much to this. When we look at medical, I want you to think about yourself as a true advocate for your patient. The main thing that I'm going to focus on today is really what we're talking about and how can we get reimbursed for the things that we're talking about. I'm going to focus on evaluations. I'm going to focus on fluoride, SDF, and how can that change? How can we get these things reimbursed? How can we advocate for our patients to get these things paid for? Again, for me, it's about decreasing our patients out of pocket. When we do the right things for our patients, our production is going to increase organically. We're going to see an increase in case acceptance for the things that we're talking about today, all these adjunctive services that we're offering in our practices, which is fantastic. We have to look at ourselves as medical specialists. We are a true medical specialty. We're oral physicians. The term dentist, the term hygienist, I'd like to see that erased from the face of the earth. We are so much more than that at this point of the game. We are a medical specialty, and we need to be looked at as such. A hygienist to me is somebody that the first word that comes to mind is a cleaner. We're not a cleaner anymore. A dentist means teeth. We're so much more than just looking at teeth anymore. So how do we change that perspective? And all of the things that we're talking about tonight puts us in a whole different category of care that we're providing and a whole different value by our patients. So I also want to show you one of the biggest things that I think medical specialists, such as us, and medical doctors, they are paid on how hard they have to think. We are paid on code sets. That's it. And medical is too, but it's a very different code set. All the things that we've been talking about, we are talking about the ATP bioluminescence. Doug Young talked about that. Michelle just mentioned it. We are talking about a lot of counseling and coaching our patients. We are talking about pH and assessing pH. We're talking about salivary testing, maxillofacial and oral cancer screenings. We are taking periodontal assessments. We're looking at biofilm. We're looking at medical histories that are extensive because of medications and complications our patients have. There are so many things that create complexity in these encounters with our patients. However, dentistry does not allow us to get paid for any of that. As a hygienist, I think about if I have an 8-year-old in the chair and I have an 80-year-old, that is a completely different encounter. However, if we're using a periodic eval for that, we're getting paid about $28 for that encounter. Not okay. I don't know any MD that gets paid $28 for an evaluation. So in medicine, the way that it works, we are reimbursed on the complexity of the medical decision-making involved in that encounter. There's nothing that says anything about age here. So basically that encounter could be straightforward, low, moderate, or high. Now I can't get into the weeds with all of that, but that's a very big shift from how we're being reimbursed by dental. The other part of this key component is the amount of time that we're spending with our patients in evaluation and management of that patient, whether it's FaceTime or non-FaceTime. So whichever is higher is going to win the game, and that is how we're going to choose codes. It's not based on anything more than that, and it makes so much sense. The way that we are being reimbursed in dentistry doesn't make any sense to me. The longer I do this, I don't understand it. We should be being paid on this. If we look at what that looks like, we have our new patients and we have our established patients, just like we do in dentistry. We have codes for that. We have something different called medical decision making. And basically you could look at it as like the periodic eval, the D0120. And you could have a level 2, 3, 4, and 5, all with different, like a sliding scale. So basically all with a different fee attached to that based on the level of medical decision making and time. You could have a different code. Now, does that make your evaluations and your write-offs look a little bit different if you're in network with dental? Yes, it does, but who cares? If you're billing this to medical, we can't bill separate fees to dental and medical, and we want to be reimbursed as a medical provider. So we have to have different fees. We have to have sliding scales. So again, this is a really fast overview. I want to focus on Caries risk assessment. This is how easy it is. There are medical diagnosis codes that go along with Caries: moderate, high, and unspecified. We have to establish medical necessity in order to get paid from medical. Caries disease is the #1 disease in the world. People, this should be a pandemic in itself. Why are we here? This is crazy. The only company that I know that is doing anything about totally researching this and researching the products to help patients is Oral Biotech, Carie Free. And that's why there is no competitor in any of my slides here, because there is nobody else that this is all they do. There are a lot of manufacturers for preventative products, but they're also selling you products to treat the cavity too. So there are diagnosis codes, and that would pair along with our attempt for remineralization and treating actual fluoride, using adult fluoride as well as child fluoride. Here's another, we're doing a lot of sleep screenings. I think that's very important. Things that we do help saves people's lives. Caries does eventually cause infection, and that infection can kill people. So it's important that we do these screenings. But Z13.89 is a diagnosis code as well as screening for sleep apnea that helps increase our complexity of our encounter again, and we can be reimbursed for that. Here is an example of a level 4 evaluation and a fluoride varnish placed. You can see the result of that. Does that look anything like what dental is going to reimburse you? Now, I'm going to be transparent. This is out of California, so the reimbursements are higher. But I can tell you that this is not uncommon. Fluoride is usually not reimbursed at that level for most payers, but anything that we can get for our children as well as our adults is a benefit. It decreases their out-of-pocket, and we need to be doing this. We need to help decrease their out-of-pocket so they say yes and they get the treatment that they want. Our reimbursements are so low on the dental side, and we know that for adults that they aren't going to reimburse for fluoride at all. I also am getting SDF. I had my first claims go through with SDF, which was great. That code has not been totally approved for reimbursement yet, but I was able to appeal it and get SDF covered for a colleague in our industry who is losing her teeth because of her health. So my question to you is why? Why are we looking at only dental as reimbursement for our patients? Let's advocate for our patients and let's get them the coverage that they need and get them the treatment that they so badly deserve. From here, I am going to let Christine Taxon take over, as well as Dr. Doug Thompson, and they are going to talk a little bit more about this. And I hope you guys have an incredible night, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kendra. We appreciate it. I want to talk about biofilm and the tooth and food for the biofilm, which is coming from part of our environment. So one of the things that we want to think about is remineralization strategies. We also want to talk about early lesion treatment and what we're going to do there, and then maintenance strategies to lower future risk. We want to do that as well. So this biofilm assessment is passionate. I'm passionate about that. I do a lot with biofilm assessment in periodontal disease management, and now in caries management, we have that opportunity as well. So we've already talked about the ATP meter produced by Caries Free, and that particular modality Doug Young spoke about. So I'm going to leave that alone. But I also want to know there's an additional way to measure the biofilm, and that's through quantitative PCR DNA analysis. And quantitative PCR DNA analysis is similar to what we do in periodontal disease. We have a panel of 11 of the most cariogenic bacteria as a snapshot of the biofilm. And we also have 4 species of Candida on this particular salivary diagnostics test. Simple swish and spit test. It works and it works very well to give you some information. So what you can learn from this is in like a case like Ava. I have a child with basically caries on every single deciduous tooth that she has. So as a 9-year-old, we put her through caries management system. But what we want to do is we want to look at the biofilm. So in 2019, we look at her biofilm score, and we ascertain that. I'm going to give you those results in just a minute, because what happens is in 2020, as we were treating her, we treated the initial lesions, no new lesions. 2021, no new lesions. 2022, no new lesions. And what we go and look at the caries score on our biofilm metrics, a score of 1 or under is considered low risk. Anything above that is a significant risk. And so we have an initial score of 4.36. We go out a year later, over a year later, it's 0.33, and then almost 3 years later, it's 0.11. So again, using some kind of metric to look at biofilm management is going to be another opportunity. So that's something that I'm passionate about as well. So that plus the Caries screen meter are really nice tools. How do we treat the biofilm? How do we adjust the biofilm if we find out it's pathogenic? Well, in 2012, we had a great paper mainly about periodontal care, low-cost perio by Dr. Jorgen Slotz, and he outlines 2 of the most significant antimicrobials we have in the healthcare industry are 0.2% sodium hypochlorite. That's what's in the Caries-Free treatment rinse that you see on the screen. In addition to elevated pH, xylitol, and fluoride, a beautiful biofilm adjusting rinse. And then what else do we have? We have iodine, another very potent antimicrobial. So you can use these in some methodology to help manage the biofilm. And we usually do it in a rinse and spit methodology. So back to Doug Young's comment about the remin strategies and the 5 ingredients, and he equated this to making a nice chocolate chip cookie. I only want to talk on this particular piece about the research that looks at nanohydroxyapatite, because again, I'm interested in the biofilm modification to reduce the acid challenge, take care of the bugs, no caries. So research shows that nanohydroxyapatite, to be effective, it needs to be sourced properly. It needs to be the right size, and it needs to be the right shape. So when you start to see products marketed to the consumer, think about, does it have the right type of nanohydroxyapatite? And that would be 20 nanograms average size, and then the right shape would be spherical. There's only one supplier that has that particular product, in Caries-free products uses that nano HA in their products and puts these 5 concepts, always puts these 5 concepts forefront in the mind of their product development. So it's really, really a great opportunity, and the company's doing a beautiful job. And so that's why we trust their products. Now, we talked a little bit about treating, and we can treat the person, that's the biofilm, and we can do risk assessment, we can do environment management, as Susan talked about and others talked about, and the risk assessment was covered really well. But what about treating the tooth? Well, we have SDF products, and again, we can we can bill insurance for that. We have SDF products. You know the trade-off for that is it can make the teeth black. However, it's a great product for geriatric population, pediatric population, a lot of applications for that. What's newer on the market would be peptides, peptides which provide a matrix for hydroxyapatite formation. It's a really nice opportunity. Curodont has self-assembling peptide products, and Doug showed some magic happen before your eyes, a remineralized lesion, and that's what you can get with some of these products. And of course, in our sealant world, you either have resin bonded or glass ionomer, and the glass ionomers are going to have more of a remineralization strategy. In the maintenance phase, obviously OHI is huge, and Susan talked about that, but our rinses should be pH balanced. They should contain some remin additives, xylitol, fluoride, those will help. Our pastes and varnishes are out there, and again, my favorite is the Caries-free paste. It has nanohydroxyapatite sourced from the right place. It has xylitol. And again, as we go through and talk about our patient management, it is our radiographic frequency should be based on risk. I take some radiographs at 6 months. I take some radiographs at 18 months. Depends on the caries risk. And then, of course, our environmental factors as well. So what I'd like to do now is introduce my friend Christine Taxon. And Christine, if you want to just come on and talk to us about dental codes and piggyback kind of on what Kendra said.
My name is Christine Taxon, and I think I've been working with Caries-free since Jenny and I met at a meeting about 17, 18 years ago. So I have a firsthand knowledge as a patient with it. And I went into speaking on dental and medical coding, and lo and behold, all of this just kind of came together for me. When you are billing dental codes in the medical world, you have the ability to look at ICD-10 codes to diagnose what you're doing, which actually helps you shorten the amount of time you have to document. But the rules have changed, and so anyone taking care of Medicare, Medicaid, veterans, or any of the government associations must use different diagnostic codes to explain not what they're doing, but why it's a medical necessity. So like everybody else's comments tonight, which were amazing, and I learned a lot, is that we have to explain to patients not what we have to do for them, whether it's fluoride or not, it's why they need the treatment. And helping you diagnose and understanding that we can say, you know, the topics of a code, there are arrested dental caries, there's dental caries on the pit and fissure, there's dental caries on the smooth surface, dental root caries, it could be limited to enamel, penetrating into dentin, and penetrating into pulp. And of course, as you go on, the more involved the tooth structure is and the HARIA. The dental codes are there for us to be using. 90% of them may not get covered. However, we should be using them irregardless of whether we're going to bill or not, whether we get paid or not, because your documentation is so important. So we have several codes here, and one of the things that you have to remember that Kendra talked about were the risk assessment. If you do a risk assessment and you have the scoring of it, You need to put that on your letter of medical necessity to back up the need for these treatments. I believe that the medical intervention for these treatments is so important that medical billing is a must. And so having the ability to do preventive medicine counseling, we know that each one of you are taking 30 minutes, whether it's you and your hygienist or just your hygienist. These are important procedures that we should be billing for. And in the medical world, they do cover these things. The application of topical fluoride and the silver fluoride for dental caries. These are medical procedures, and they are part of even the medical world who is being told to do these things. The other major thing that Susan mentioned is nutritional therapy. And this is a great code for Susan. There is one for 15 minutes and one for 30. But the fact is, there are coverages for these things because of our body, the amount of diabetes in the world, and all of the other information that you have. And when you are billing the medical world for lab work, if you're doing oral DNA, if you're doing the diabetic blood testing and sending it to the medical doctor, anything that you're sending back and forth, including your implant procedures, you should be billing supplies and material that are above what you keep in your office on a daily visit. So, and if you need more help with these, I'm sure Kendra or I will be happy to help you in learning more of this. But I have a few things that I just want to go over for documentation purposes. Be very specific about why you are providing these services or treatment to the patient and to the insurance company, because providing the why to a patient gives them the ability to understand the need for treatment and want the treatment, not that we're talking to them as if they wouldn't understand it. The document any informed refusal of treatment if the patient notes that they need to leave the office and think about it. And the reason for that is to protect the provider. When coding a particular visit, there will also be additional codes that can be grouped together to provide a clear explanation of what was done and why it was done. And if you provide a service, you should document it with the appropriate level of code. So if you're doing a risk assessment, don't just say you did a risk assessment. Let's give them the value of that risk assessment code. And then following that, if patients have any government insured plans, even kids programs, you are obligated now to put in an ICD-10. And this is just a brief example of some coding examples and ideas. And I thank you so much for your attention. I want to thank Dr. K and Jenny and Lacey for putting this presentation together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine, and everyone else. And thank you all for your patience. Thank you for spending your evening with us. The verification code is on the screen right now, CDAM 2024. CDAM, which stands for Caries Disease Awareness Month, by the way. CDAM 2024. And if anybody wants to hang around, we can get to some Q&A, but I believe our presenters have been doing an amazing job getting on the Q&A chat and answering questions. But I will go through and see if there's anything that hasn't been answered yet, that if one of our presenters wants to chime in and answer for us. And while I do that, I am going to also show you our Get Involved box. So if you want to help support us and support Caries Disease Awareness Month, we are sending out Get Involved boxes. Here's a QR code you can scan to request your own, or you can go to cariesdisease.com and request a box there. We will also have a request option in the follow-up email that you get. And I know there's been questions about where do I put the code? Where do I put my verification code? As soon as you leave this webinar, a survey is going to pop up. Very first question, what's the verification code? That's how you get your CE. I hope that answered the question for everyone. Let's see. I'm going to look in the question box. What is the effect of xylitol on gut biome? Now that the gut brain axis, let's see. It says an anonymous attendee. I'm not sure I can read what exactly you're asking. What is the effect of xylitol on gut biome now that the gut brain axis and its profound effects on health have been metanalized? Can I ask one of the
Hey, Jenny,
presenters?
can
You
you hear
guys-
me?
Yes.
Jen, yeah, it's Doug Thompson. Xylitol, any of the artificial sweeteners, any of them are going to alter gut biome, especially if you ingest large amounts. So these sodas and these drinks that are sweetened with artificial sweeteners, they can definitely alter gut biome. And when you alter gut biome, you get oxidative stress, which is inflammation, and that has profound effects on the body. So the best thing is to avoid all of those types of things. So most of the artificial sweeteners we use would be rinse and spit. It wouldn't be ingested into the gut. So that's a whole big loaded issue, but we could talk about that for a long time. But that's altered gut microbiome is a real concern.
Thank you. How about this one, Colorado, and we can build dental insurance with our own NPI number, but not sure if medical insurance can be billed. Kendra, Christine?
Yes, it can.
Oh, really?
Well, it's gonna need to be the doctor's NPI unless in the state, the hygienist has an NPI and it's within their scope of practice to be able to bill on their own as like a dental therapist.
Here's another one. I heard a webinar by Lori Hopper in which she stated that repeated uses of rinses create resistant pathogens and the efficacy of the rinses diminish over time. How does Caries Free avoid this?
Yeah, I don't want to dominate it's Doug Thompson again. I don't want to dominate the answers, but this is a really sore spot for me. If you have a dysbiosis in the mouth, you need to address the dysbiosis and get that biofilm back to a state of health. And I can tell you that, and Dr. Cooch has plenty of research studies to show that there's no resistant bugs to sodium hypochlorite. Sodium hypochlorite is a highly effective antimicrobial. They use it in hospitals. They use it all over the place. And I want to be careful how we say this, but we're not creating resistant pathogens in the mouth. We're trying to readjust the biofilm to a state of health, and then we're going to maintain it when it's balanced. So Caries Free doesn't avoid altering the microbiome. That's what we want it to do, because we have a pathogenic shift it has too much pathogenic bacteria. And you're going to have to take out some of the commensal healthy bacteria with the pathogenic bacteria. But the beauty of the system is it heals in the commensal bacteria grow so much faster than the pathogenic bacteria that pretty soon you get a beautiful, healthy biome and the pathogenic bacteria can't grow. Nobody's recommending that you stay on Caries Free treatment rinse for a lifetime or for a long period of time. It's used to adjust the biofilm, and then we have maintenance rinses that are much softer to maintain things once it's healthy.
And piggybacking on what Doug has already said, I believe the pH component in the products are very, very important. And simple analogy I use is, yeah, the hypochlorite might be the weed killer, but the pH is the fertilizer. And based on Phil Marsh's studies, the pH determines the shift in the homeostatic balance of the biofilm. So by raising the pH, you're deselecting the pathogens and increasing the chance of commensal bacteria coming back first.
One last question. What company do you use to test for Caries bacteria?
If that question is directed at me at the quantitative PCR test, that's by Phytolab. It's a Seattle-based company, Fidalab, and they have a nice comprehensive caries panel and quite a few other panels, comprehensive perio and comprehensive caries as well, which includes yeast on the panel.
I think we're going to end it. Thank you all again so much. Thank you to our presenters, our co-op members. I didn't take any time to tell you about our Caries risk assessment contest that we have going. But part of that Get Involved box is we send you Caries risk assessment forms along with a lot of other fun goodies and patient educational material. And the contest is to perform the most Caries risk assessment during the month of October. And the prize is a guest appearance on the #1 podcast by Dr. Kim Cooch, Contrary to Ordinary, a guest appearance on his podcast, as well as your very own Nespresso machine for your office and a popcorn machine. So we are giving that away. Request your Get Involved box today. And again, that verification code is CDAM 2024. As soon as you leave this webinar, a survey will pop up. Enter that verification code. But good night and thank you, everyone.